What happens in a small town at a 9 to 5 when you ask every customer the same question for a 5-hour shift? You get a lot of interesting answers. Today, I decided to take a poll among my customers. This morning, it all started out with a simple memory. When I was a child, I can recall wanting to take over the world. Now, I always had a way of it when I was little. I always wanted to be the president or to just own the world so I can have everything I want for free and stuff. And it evolved as I got older, and most of my childhood I had dreamed of ruling the world. And it made me wonder, was that normal? Cuz I kind of thought everyone just thought about that when they were kids. So I asked my boss, and he said yes, everyone thinks about it. He wanted to take over the world when he was a kid. So I was like, you know what? Let's put it to the test. So I asked just about every customer I could from that moment on for a 5-hour shift if, when they were a child, if they wanted to take over the world. And it may surprise you, but most of them said no. Specifically, the results were 16 to. Oh. The results were 19 to 9. So 9 customers did admit that when they were children, they wanted to take over the world, quite enthusiastically, I might add. And the others were, no, I don't really remember that. And I did have some pretty interesting specific answers as well. The first guy I asked the question to, he said he remembered wondering what it would be like if he were the president. And I was kind of contemplating whether or not that really counted, but I'd say it was a basic question, as I remember that being an essay prompt in second grade. So I put that as a no. But taking over the world is definitely a more extreme dynamic. So, yeah, I didn't count that, but I had some really fun answers. One guy said when he was a child, he wanted to be super, super rich so he could buy a castle for his mom. And I was like, that's kind of sweet. Usually when you're a kid, you just think about all the toys you want to buy. But he wanted to buy a castle for his mom, so that's definitely a very selfless wish? Another guy told me he wanted to be a superpower, or he wanted to have the superpower of invisibility, so if he saw an injustice in the world going on, he could just totally beat somebody up and get away with it. Which is cool, vigilante mode, right? And I was like, I remember when I was a kid, I thought about having invisibility too, but it was just so I could go into the store and just steal a bunch of toys I wanted and get away with it. One woman came in with her son, and the son said, he did think about it a time or two, and I was like, you know what? I bet she wanted to take over the world too, because she came in just strutting her stuff. She had a model walk going on, and she just totally, her energy took over the room. And well, she ran out to her car to get something, so I asked her son if he wanted to take over the world when he was a kid, and he said he did a time or two, and I was like, you know what, I bet your mom wanted to. He's like, oh yeah, definitely, that's where I get it from. She came in, and I asked her, did you want to take over the world when you were a kid? She's like, I am taking over the world, or something like that. It's like, you know what, you're a Leo, and I was right. She just had some big energy going on, and that was really exciting. But one of my favorite conversations about it was pretty deep. This lady came in and I asked her if she wanted to take over the world, and she gave a very thoughtful response. She said, I think that's very obligatory. And it's like, yeah, but when you're a kid, you don't really think about the responsibility of it. You just think about how you'll get your way and you get everything you want. She's like, yeah, that's very true. And, we went on to discuss how influenced we are in the world. And, I went to Walmart a few days ago and I saw this little kid. He couldn't have been older than 2 years old. And he was in the cart with his grandma. And I heard him say, I hate you. And it was like, oh my he charged up every bit of energy he could to put those 3 words together. You know, he couldn't have, like, been talking for very long. He must have just started learning how to talk. And that's what he said. That was his choice of words. And it's just sad because, you know, he had to have heard that from somewhere. Somebody taught him that. And it's sad that even a 2-year-old knows the concept of hate. But on the contrary, you know, there's also a lot of cats and dogs who say, I love you. And it's awesome because it's like, you know, they hear that a lot. That's in their vocabulary. They hear it so much that they can even mimic the words. And it means that they are well loved. So, for every bad thing in life, there's a lot of good that comes into it too. Now, who knows if I had done 5 extra hours of research or taken it abroad, went to other places of the United States or even over the world, and asked so many more people. Maybe if I had asked the question differently, I would have got different responses. But you know, it did seem like when I told them it was for a poll, they said no, but when I just asked them out of the blue, they seemed more, comfortable. Ah. Oh. They seemed more comfortable expressing it and, like, being honest that they did when they were kids. So maybe that's why I got so many no's, but you'll never know. Maybe some of the people were in denial because they felt like, oh, well, she's recording it, they'll expose me and I'll look like a bad person. It was definitely a social experiment, and I enjoyed doing it, and at some other point in time, I may want to revisit it, perhaps with a different question. But it was definitely fun. It opened a lot of conversations. It made my day better, and I think it made a lot of other people's days better too. I even asked a kid if he thought about taking over the world. He said no. He said that he was the oldest of like 4 siblings. And I told his mom, I was like, well, I was the youngest. She goes, well, there you go. That's probably why you wanted to take over the world. So maybe she's onto something. Maybe it's just a youngest sibling thing. Youngest siblings unite. If you're the youngest, give me a shout out in the comments. You know, but who knows what the truth is, right? Does that make me a bad person that I wanted to take over the world when I was a kid? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think I'm bad. Maybe we are. Maybe we're a horrible human. Nah, come on, man. Come on. It's best to get it out of your system when you're young. You know, you don't want to be corrupt like some people. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, if you ever get the chance, maybe at your job or someplace you go to, maybe your local gym, if you ever have a question and you want to, see the popular vote, go ahead, don't be afraid. Take a poll. People are all very, very welcome to answer your questions. At least for me, anyway. They were very willing to participate and they seemed to enjoy it. It was out of the ordinary, you know? It was more than just the, how may I help you today? It was the, hey, I got a personal question for you. It makes them think, you know? It makes them think back on their childhood and it's fun, you know? You get to reminisce and talk about something a little bit out of the ordinary. So, yeah, don't be afraid to get the message out there. Do a little bit of research, ask questions, have surveys, you know, even if it's for science purposes or whatever you want to do, you know. But shake it up, have some fun. So, yeah, I mean, does that make me a bad person? Does that make me crazy? Does that make everyone else boring? Who knows? Who knows, man? But I'll tell you what, I'm not trying to take over continents. Oh, one person said that they thought about taking over a specific part of the world. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, keep it more localized, you know? That, you know, you have more control that way. You don't gotta be responsible for the whole world, just part of it. I thought that was pretty smart too. I don't know what part of the world he was thinking of. Maybe we were on the same wavelength about something. We're not gonna get into that. But maybe it was, maybe he had an embarrassing phase in middle school or something. But yeah, overall, I had a great time asking those questions, and I got an answer. So if you want to know, in a small town in the amount of 5 hours, asking about every other person, the majority of the vote said no, they did not want to take over the world as kids. So, there you have it. That's my statistics. Hope that helps. Have a good day. Bye.